okay? Or I could be like, I know my friends, I know that 2 and 2 makes 4, I know how to get to the metro. But what is it that we mean when we say, something about the world?
I don't know how to respond to that.
Oh, I might say I know the time, but what is it that makes you snarl angrily at me and say, no, you do not know the time? Is knowledge description of something, or is it more of a normative concept? Most generally, when we try to talk about knowledge, we try to denote a certain kind of factive state. How can we then say what we know and what we do not know in such a factive and abstract sense of language? Before we go deep dive into that, let's start by talking about people who think that they can have no knowledge about the universe at all. There are skeptics like Descartes and Ghazali who believe that we cannot know anything about the world. And because of the fact that we cannot prove in any way that we are now in a dream, they believe that we cannot have any certainty of what the real world actually is. Vasubandhu, another philosopher, argues that if our dreams can be so real and they can be so vivid all the time, why couldn't it be the case that our minds are making it up all the time, even though you think that you're now in a dream? Descartes argues that when we say we know things, we get our perceptions from our senses. We think that the stars are so small, and they're humongous. We see mirrors all the time, we have hallucinations. We hear our names being called when there's apparently nobody around. So of course we cannot trust our senses. Even evolutionarily speaking, our senses have not been optimized for truth-finding. Our senses are supposed to perceive the world in a way that maximizes the rate of our survival, not the rate of perception of the truth in the universe. Descartes in Meditations got so introspective that he started questioning what he knows about the world with certainty. And he ended concluding that he doesn't know anything about the world, except the fact that he has this thinking thing. And then we get his famous statement, I think, therefore I am. The fact that he is doubting about the certainty of the universe, the fact that he is doubting and thinking about this question of what he knows about the universe, is the proof for the fact that there has to be a thing that is doing the doubting, or there has to be a thing that is doing the thinking. And hence he has a proof for the existence of his thinking thing, or the mind, but he doesn't have any proof for existence of whatsoever else. He doesn't know that the outer world exists. He doesn't know that his body parts exist. He only knows that his thinking thing or mind exists. And therefore, I think, therefore I am. Of course, we can have a lot of counter-arguments against Descartes' statement if we think that this is some sort of argument, but that's for a separate video. For now, the important question is, how do we know anything about the world with such faulty senses? And as Vasubandhu argues, if our senses are deceiving us all the time, why couldn't it be the case that our intellectual reasoning is deceiving us all the time too? How do we trust what we think, and how do we think it is true? If you are a hardcore skeptic like Descartes, or Ghazali, or Vasubandhu, well indeed, we do not know anything about the world really. But if you think that we can trust our senses, at least for most of the time, then we might be in luck. There are a few interesting theories that talk about what knowledge is and that try to define this interesting question of what is it when we say we know things. Amusingly, the theory that I want to talk about here today is called JTB theory. Plato in his book Theaetetus talks about knowledge being true belief plus an element C. In his dialogue with Theaetetus, where Theaetetus argues that knowledge is nothing more than true belief, meaning that just a belief which is true, Plato thinks that there has to be something more to true belief to make it knowledge, and he calls this element C. Plato argues that without this extra element, some beliefs could be accidentally true and still count as knowledge under the definition that we are creating, but intuitively doesn't feel as knowledge. I can give you an example. Let's say I have a train to catch at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I look at the clock in the wall and it says 5:55 a.m. Therefore I rush to the train station just to catch the train on time. Let's say the clock that I saw on the wall was broken and was stuck at 5:55 a.m. And when I saw 5:55 a.m. in the clock, it was not because the clock was functioning properly, it was just by chance that it happened to be the case that I looked at the right time, at the time the clock was stuck on. Now if I ask you, did I know that it was 5:55 a.m. when I looked at the broken clock? I think most of us would answer no. I clearly didn't know. Plato didn't think I knew in that case either. You propose that for something, for a belief to be counted as knowledge, it has to have three things. A belief. B, truth to the belief. The third, an element C, as we talked about earlier, that makes the true belief non-accidental. And philosophers would like to argue that the third element C that Plato proposed, the justification. And therefore comes the theory JTB, where J means justification, T means true, and B means belief, or justified true belief. Now, what is justification is again a contentious and a philosophical question. But in simple terms, justification is the rationale that you have for holding a certain belief. In the early example of the broken clock, even though I had a true belief that it was 5:55 a.m., I'd be justified in believing so only if I had certain rationales to believe that it is the case. For example, that the clock is working properly, it is synced with the outer time zone of the world, and so on and so on. The move to bring in the third conjunct for the necessities of defining knowledge is to avoid the fact that sometimes true beliefs, which are accidental and intuitively do not count as knowledge, would also be counted as knowledge under our definition of true belief. Now, does the third conjunct solve the problem? No. In 1963, Edmund Gettier, an epistemologist, using a paper which was just 3 pages, challenged this age-old notion of traditional epistemology using JTB theory. He proposed examples of problems with JTB theory, which are widely known as Gettier problems. And my epistemology professor even used the term Gettier is a verb, as in you just got Gettiered. So maybe well done with your life, Gettier. Well, we talk about Gettier problems and how he smashed traditional epistemology in the next video. Tune in for more epistemic spaghetti. Thanks.